Hello, and welcome once again to Give Your Walls Some Soul. This is the artist program designed to relieve your inhibitions about painting. My name is Ed Ford, and when we were together last, Shannon Grissom, San Bernardino County's famous artist, made us realize that you can take a subject within a subject, and she painted a beautiful cluster of grapes. Today, we're going to see how Shannon can bring a bell pepper to life. Ladies and gentlemen, Shannon Grissom.
Thank you, Ed. Thanks, David, on the guitar. Today what we're going to do is paint a bell pepper. So I'll show you how I took a subject and had several peppers and how we scaled that down and decided what type of composition that we're going to use. So what I did was I went out in the field and I took a picture of some bell peppers in my backyard. And I had them at various different stages, and even after all of the pictures I took, I still didn't like anything as far as one particular painting. So if any of you guys saw the show last time, you remember my high-tech viewer. I used my mat board, cut it up, and what I do is I place it around the picture until I decided what composition I liked the best. Well, squares are one of my very favorite forms of composition, so I picked a square format, chopped off what I didn't like, and from there I was able to decide what I was going to paint. Okay. Now, I got some viewer feedback, which was great from the last episode, and one of the questions they asked me was, well, how do you know what size you're going to paint? How do you know what size canvas you want? Basically, everybody has a sense of scale that's comfortable to them. So what I do is I pick, everything I do has to be larger than life. I just don't like to paint small. So it's really a matter of what feels comfortable for you. For me, I like to paint larger, much larger than life. If you take a look at this canvas, and this is one pepper, you can say that it's definitely larger than life. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. I drew in a rough outline of where the pepper's placement's going to be. That was definitely in the interest of time. I wanted to get that to a certain stage. And now I'm going to go ahead and just block in the background. The types of colors that I use, that was another question that I got from viewer feedback, was how do you select your palette? Do you use different colors every time? And basically I use the same 7 colors no matter what I'm painting. I may add a few different ones here and there depending on the subject, but I use the same colors over and over. It really helps me be consistent, and I'm very conscious of what the colors can or can't do. So let's start with the background. I'm going to grab some dioxazine purple. And I'm really looking for something dark. I add a little bit of alizarin to that. I'm painting a yellow bell pepper. I'm picking something that's complementary to put in the background. So the very, very first stages are thinned down. This is this product that you see here. I can't say brand name on TV, but this product helps thin the paint down, and it also dries a little bit faster. So I'm going to go ahead and just throw some color in the background. This is, again, a mixture of some alizarin. It's a little bit warmer than I wanted. I'll add a little blue to that. Alizarin and dioxazine purple.
Shannon, do you always start with a white canvas, or sometimes I've seen other artists have a tone or a background color?
I do start with the basically, if I start with a white canvas if I'm going to use a white palette. My palette and my canvas are always the same. If I use a tone ground, then I would need to use a tone palette so that when I'm mixing here, it's going to be the same thing here and have the same effect once it hits the canvas. So I do always, and I do prefer white. However, I do some toned work, and a good way to use a tone palette would be to use a sheet of glass as your palette. And what you can do is put colored paper under it, and then that colored paper would match whatever you tone the canvas to be, and then you're on the same, you've got to be on the same page. If this is white, that's got to be white. Well, okay, rules are made to be broken. You don't have to be, but it makes it a heck of a lot easier. You can tell that everything is consistent. Basically, if you're mixing something on your palette, it doesn't get any better when you move it on the canvas. It's going to be the same here as it is there. So as long as it's looking good here, it's going to be happy up here. And you know I like happy. I really kind of scribble my way to a good painting. The background in. And I think I'm going to add a little bit of red to that just because there was a red bell pepper next to the yellow one. And there is an influence in what that pepper does, the redness of that pepper, does to this pepper that's over here. So I need to know that if you've got a green bell pepper next to a yellow bell pepper, the coloration is going to be different. You're always influenced by your neighbors. And so I'm going to add some red here because it was casting some red down there. I always pick the canvas up so I can get down to the places I can't reach. And as you can see right now, I'm scribbling. I didn't just draw a line of pepper. I'm starting from the outside and working in to create a hole. Okay.
I have a question, Shannon. When you look at a bell pepper or subject matter, what is it about it that makes you want to interpret it on canvases?
Well, I really like things with a lot of vibrant color. I don't like things that are really busy. I tend to like a single subject, focus on one particular item. And I also like, but it's got to be colorful, bright, or shiny. I like metal. So what interests me to paint, some people will see the fall foliage, and I love the color and that kind of thing, but a spring painting might not appeal to me. Landscapes might not necessarily, I might really think they're beautiful, but not want to paint them. I like the fact that when I'm done painting a bell pepper, you can see the form and the 3 dimensions of it. But as far as, it's definitely, I would have to say color first, and I love reflections. So reflections in metal or even in objects that are more opaque. I'm going to continue around the background. I just want to get a basic color in there to get started. It was fairly dark in the background. I need some more liquid. I only put a little bit out at a time because it's not good to breathe a lot of this stuff. Oops. I must be really influenced today because my other paintings were a lot more violet and a lot cooler, but I think that I'm influenced actually by the background paintings in this studio. So I'm finding that's interesting that that's occurring. I thought I would share that with you. I didn't expect that to happen, so we'll see. You'll notice that I'm doing the painting in 3 stages. I'm going to show you the beginning stage. I'll paint that in its entirety during the show. Then I'll show you one that's halfway done and one that's done, and you'll notice a huge difference between the one that I've completed and the colors that are in that painting as opposed to what's happening here. And rather than fight it and try to make it like the other painting, I'm just going to go with what's here, because that's where the environment is very, that's a good lesson, and the environment is very important. Plays a big part in what's going on. I've done paintings in the middle of summer that have a lot more space and have, I actually go toward cooler colors, but it feels like fall, and that's what's happening right now.
Shannon, do you always use sable brushes, or do you prefer?
I use I use sable, synthetic sable, and bristle as well. For the background scrubbing in, I definitely like bristle brushes. I can really kind of get it to grab. For the finer details, I like to use sable. I think the most important thing that I've found is that, and I've heard it over and over, but I didn't do it, is that you're supposed to always use good brushes, and it really makes a big difference whether you use good brushes or bad brushes. So it's important to spend the money to get the good brushes because you're only as good as your tools. And the other thing is that I hadn't bought new brushes in a long time, and I didn't realize how they had worn out. And I got some new ones, like, wow, you know, it's like new tinnies. I can jump faster and run higher and do everything. You know, run higher, oh boy. Anyway, you get new brushes, you can do some really good things. So it's important to keep track of how are your brushes doing. You know, or is it time to replace them? And don't hang on to them. It's time to throw them out. Throw them out. Well, you know, you get hairs that just split off to the side, and they just basically stop working in the way that you want them to.
Does the brush get split ends?
Yes, they do get split ends. But I also take very good care of my brushes. I wash my brushes after every session. I never leave paint on them. They're very expensive, and it's good to take good care of them.
I notice you have a lot of texture in your background. Is that to complement the pepper also?
Yeah, that's interesting. I noticed, I was sitting in the studio yesterday, and I noticed that one of the things that my paintings have in common is that there's a single solid object, and there's always, that's solid and very stoic, just sitting there grounded. But around the object is a lot of activity, a lot of movement. And I guess that would be a reflection of me. I actually am fairly calm and centered, but then around me there's lots of stuff going on. And so it is a nice compliment. I think it might be boring if the background, there are times when I consciously do, I'll paint a sky, for example, and want the focal point to be down in another area, so I won't do much to the sky. I will have that almost flat, so that the other things pop. And so in this case, it is a good way for it to pop because it is moving. There's a lot of movement. My challenge is to not blend away in subsequent layers all the movement and all the cool things that are happening. See, when I'm not paying attention to what's happening and I'm just putting in color, then interesting designs come up. It's kind of like if you were sick and you were a kid and you started staring at the walls trying to find faces and different things. You can see all kinds of things in my paintings once you start looking. Boy, I've seen, somebody told me there were unicorns and angels flying in this one. So if I just allow that to happen and just let that go, all kinds of really neat things happen if I allow the painting to take control rather than myself, which is always a challenge. Okay. I knew we were stuck on something. I looked at it and thought, I'm not too sure about the composition already on part of it, but you know what? I'm just going to keep going and see what happens. Okay, so we have this white blob swimming in purple. That's how they all start, blobs swimming in other blobs. So there we've got the background in. As I've talked about before, I don't use toxic chemicals to clean my brushes. I use canola oil and I use dishwashing detergent. So as a result of that, I can't just clean this brush and use it again. You'll see that I use a number of brushes throughout the painting session. And so it saves my lungs doing it this way. But it's a pain to clean all these brushes. Okay, so did the easy part, the background. That was just not much going on. I'm going to go ahead and show you the reference photo so that you can get a good idea of what I'm trying to accomplish here. The bell pepper has a distinct shadow side and light side. So, and it's, when you're dealing with yellow, the difference between how light and dark this pepper is, especially with yellow, because yellow is light in value in and of itself. The challenge is always to make that value difference pop. And when you have something that is only a mid value and a light value, it's harder to do. But I thought that the yellow was much more interesting, so that's what we're going to do. And so my challenge is to make this dark, but you can see if you look at the background around it, there is no place on the pepper that is really as dark as the background around it, or especially around the top. Even on the stem, even in its darkest places, they're not quite that dark. So this is going to be a good lesson in keeping my values clean, and we'll just see how it works today. So that's what I'm going to start with. Okay, there are a couple ways you can approach this. You can mix all your colors first and then paint, or you can mix as you go. I've done it both ways, and actually I'm going to do something that's more in the middle. I think I'm just going to go ahead and put my lights down and my darks and then sneak up on the middles, because that's what's going to be easiest for me to do. So I always clean my knife in between mixes with toilet paper. And the reason I use toilet paper instead of paper towels is that toilet paper wipes the knife cleaner than paper towels. If you use paper towels, you're still going to have stuff left on this. So I'm mixing white. I grabbed some white, and I already did what I said I'm not supposed to, clean my knife in between brushes, in between mixes. So I'm going to mix white with a little bit of yellow, just a little bit, because white is too cold by itself. And I'm going to go ahead and paint the lightest lights in, which is really a weird place to start, because on a white canvas it's hard to see where that is, but I did do a little drawing there so I have like a map. And as I said in the last show, what I always do is I paint what I know I can do first, and I sneak up on the parts that are a little more intimidating. And by the time I get to the intimidating parts, I don't even care, I'm just painting. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and put in a little light here. I'm still scribbling, and you know what, I need a little more liquid. I use a big bottle because I use a lot of this stuff. Parts of the painting will dry shiny and parts of the painting will dry flat. I also will use the liquid as a temporary varnish on the paintings to kind of unify the flat and shiny parts. I don't use it as a final, or you can use it, it's not really a final varnish product. You should buy that separately, but that's supposed to be done a year after you've done the painting. So this is a good little protective covering for in between. So I'm still scribbling, and hopefully if I do well, I'll scribble the entire time and not get too wrapped up into it. So this is where the light's hitting the pepper, all around this top rim. There were wonderful peppers at the farmer's market in Hollister. I don't know how they tasted, because by the time I was through painting them, they looked pretty bad. That's why I take pictures. Okay, so we've got some light stuff here. And now I think what I'll do is I'll mix a medium light with this yellow. I'm using Cad Yellow Light. As you can tell, my palette does tend to go, I am pretty warm, and so I prefer cad yellow light or Indian yellow as opposed to cad yellow pale, because the pale is a little more toward the green. Okay, that's just too light for me. And I'm just going to test it here to see what I think. Needs a little more orange. I added some yellow. I tend to like organic, back to your other question, I think I like organic shapes better than geometric shapes. So that too is a factor in what I'm painting.
I have a question. On the drawing part of the, actually on the pepper,
Uh-huh.
I know you just put enough line work there to get an idea of the mass and the forms.
Right.
Is it possible that sometimes you might overdraw before you paint?
Oh, I think that it's possible for people to overdraw before they paint, but it's not possible for me because I am a much better painter than I am a drawer. So as long as I get a rough outline of where I want to go, I know I can add up these blobs to make something look realistic. If you gave me a pencil and I had to sit there and draw it, it would take me twice as long to do a drawing as it would to do the painting, and I don't enjoy it as well. So that wouldn't be a danger for me, but it could be. I think that for me, and everybody has their own way of painting, but for me, if I draw too much, then basically all I'm doing is coloring in the lines. But if I just do a rough placement of where it needs to go, then I'm really painting. And so that's a tough one. I think that depends a lot on your own sensibility. But for me, I prefer painting rather than drawing. So there would never be a danger of that. I actually learned to be a better drawer through my painting too, through that. Okay, I don't like that next to that, right? You know, as soon as ouch. That is like way too warm next to that. So I've just put a little bit down, and I'm going to temper that a little bit. But I think there needs to be a lot of blue or something lighter in the background to fix that. So I'm glad I stopped before I did too much. No matter what, okay, this is a really good lesson. No matter what color I try to change that pepper, the pepper is not what's wrong with this. It needs to be much cooler in the background for me to be happy with this whole relationship. So I could sit there and try and fix the pepper color for days and still not be happy. What I will attempt to do right now is add a lot more blue to it, and hopefully that'll cool it down and we'll have a harmonious thing. This is right now where neighbors are just going, ow, ow, ow. So it's like hitting a bad note, or for me, color is like music hitting a bad note. When you have that kind of combination, or like a chalkboard squeaking, it's that painful. So I'm going to fix that now before we go on.
I know how it is to get it bad.
I don't know if you guys heard that, but the guitar man said he knows how it is to hit a bad note. Okay, so that blue already, just a little, I could just throw in a little bit of blue right here, and that is just so much happier than that violet there. Oh, God. It's kind of like when you were a kid and somebody said to you, your mama dresses you funny. I mean, these I have a friend that said, honey, would you wear those clothes together? So that's a good, that's much better. Now, did I do this on purpose so that I could teach you this lesson? No, I screwed up. And what I'm trying to do in this show is to show you that, these kinds of things happen, and this is how you work through it.
Sometimes when I do a drawing, I'll work on it, and then the next day I come in and I look at it and I see it differently.
yeah. I work on several paintings at one time, and they're in layers. So I'm always seeing them different, and there are times when I can't be objective. Well, I can't be objective. They're my creations. I can't be objective, but if I give myself the distance of time, then that helps me see what's wrong. The other thing that I'm doing now is I'm looking in the mirror. The mirror will help point out flaws that you can't see. And another great thing is children, because they're not afraid to tell you what they think about the painting. They're very honest, and I think they can be very insightful with some suggestions, or, you know, like, why did you paint that? Why did you put that there? You know, something that's really bothering you that you might not have thought was a problem. So children are good too to help gain perspective. Okay, so that's happier. It's still not happy, but it's better. Okay, so I'm going to start going back to that. And you know, it's kind of like, you know, you fall off a horse, just keep going. I'm going to go ahead and put the stem in first, because I want to see what the relationship's going to be like with this, and then I'll go ahead and go back to the yellow. So that'll kind of anchor that in. Now, I can't use straight green to get the stem going. So I'm going to take green with a little bit of the purple, a little bit of cad red light. That'll be my dark. Yeah. I know that's not going to be a problem with the other colors that are there. So I've got some dark hair. You can't really see it against that, so that's something I'll have to address later. Just scribbling some stuff in there. This is in the shadow side, so it's cooler. I'm going to start warming that up. I'm actually just going to, I started mixing it, and I was going to add some other colors to, get it to a certain point, and I thought I'd just go ahead and start all over with this mix.
What is your darkest green on your palette in the pure form?
In pure pigment,
Yes.
Permanent green.
Permanent green?
I used to use phthalo green, but that was too cold and too strong for me. Okay, I need to just really, in the interest of time, just scribble this in and get this thing done. So the good thing about doing something like this is it helps you just, if I futz about something too long, then the painting kind of looks like that. I've been futzing too long. So here's some, here's a mid value, so we've got the dark, mid. And where else do I see? Let's see. Yeah, I'm just scribbling, so where I see some darks. So I'm drawing. This is drawing. This is my equivalent of drawing. Okay, now I need to put some lights in. Got to change my brush because there's just no way.
On your darkest dark, do you always put a little color into it, or do you ever use just a real pure black?
You know, I don't see, real rare that I use black. I don't have black on my palette. For some special, in some special circumstances, I'll use black, but that's just a choice. I feel like I can get richer darks because I'm not seeing black. If I see black, I see a lot of other colors in there. So I feel like I can get richer colors by not doing that. Okay, I gotta get this stem in. It's amazing how time flies when you're painting. Okay, so this is a lighter color. Now in this first statement, which is what I call this first pass at the canvas, all I'm doing is putting in lights, mediums, and darks. I'm not going for any detail. I'm breaking up this straight line. That's good. If I play with it anymore, it's going to be muddy and it's going to ruin all the nice little things I just did. Let's see, there's some light over here. There's some light over here. Okay, so now I need to throw in some of a medium green. I'm going to go ahead and, when I start out, it's like everything's pure and I mix everything properly. But then, as you can see by my palette, I just paint. It doesn't. All the order kind of goes away. Okay. That's not dark enough. These are things that I tell myself. What am I asking myself when I'm painting it? Is it lighter or brighter than what I'm doing? Is it darker or lighter? Is it warmer or cooler? What's the relationship between what I'm working on? Okay. I'm not even going to finish putting that in because I definitely need to have enough time to get this pepper covered. Okay, so we need like a yellow-orange. Where is the yellow-orange? This is kind of a darker. Whew, we got neon pepper here. This is dark. Now see how my dark is not real dark? Ooh, see, it started to get a little muddy with the green, but I'm just going to use that to tone it down because make it a neutral. Okay. And where else is it? Okay, even now it's starting to take some shape. You can start to see what's going on. Got to paint faster though. Okay. That's my equivalent of drawing right there. There's a line. There's a line. That works good. I'm going to throw in a little red on this side just because there was the influence over there. I'm scribbling out some of my pencil line. There was the influence of that red pepper over there, so that's going to be a redder kind of thing. Okay, let's see how this looks against this. That's much better. The light is all on this side. The light, I'm going to do the light first. The light pretty much stops around here. And okay. I'm still not liking this color combination, but I'm not going to worry about that. This is a first statement. This is what I'm doing, and I need to move on to the second statement so you can see what we're doing. Okay. Still, with this rough thing that I put in, it's starting to take some form. For it to really, no, can't do it. God, I want to just go in and I want to go in and make this thing perfect right now. But I need to move on, so I'm going to force myself to stop, go on to the dark. I'm going to add to the yellow some dioxazine purple because that's a complement, and a little bit of red. And it had too much white in there, and I didn't like what it did, and so I have to mix again. An easy way to get it down is to actually just go ahead and put an orangey kind of red over and put the purple on top, which is, I think, what I'm going to do. There we go. So you run into the danger of it being too close to this background color too.
What did you just put in there? What was that last color that you just mixed in there?
I think that's funny because I wasn't paying attention. Now, if I look back into it, I had some Cad Yellow Deep, and I started as a base. Then I grabbed some Dioxazine Purple and just brush mixed it over the top because that'll be a better neutral there.
So you're using a complementary color to change the value?
Yes. Rather than add black to make something darker, I prefer to add the color's complement to get a richer dark color. And because there are people that are more more tonal and they paint, and I'm more interested in color. So I'm more interested in color than just about anything. Okay, so then I need to add. See, it's starting to get really sloppy. But I just want to get this last bit down before I move on to the next painting.
Does it help to do color wheels?
Yeah, one of my first teachers wouldn't let me in class if I didn't have my color wheel. And so it's good to know that, but you know, once you've memorized it, then you know who's buddies with who, and you go from there. I've always been, I have learned the rules and I know what I'm supposed to do, but I've always been more of an intuitive painter. And I sometimes lack the patience to do more of the traditional ways of. There's I think Eiton has an excellent book on color. And it's, it puts me to sleep. Every time I sit down, I'd rather just paint. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and scribble this in because we're really running short on time. And even just this scribble here, which I'm not paying attention to, you can start to see that this is getting. This is darker, starting to get some form. What's going on over here? This needs to be way dark up here in order for something to happen. Basically, if you want something to turn, which I mean have a form or turn, you have to have a dark, medium, and light. And so we've got dark on the bottom. And even though this isn't a bright like over here, you've got a dark, medium, light in order for it to work. So that's how I would rough this in. Now what I'm going to do is move over to one that I took a little more care with. And I would have to say, in real time, it took me about an hour without talking to anybody to get this to this state. So it's using the same principles, but it was done. You can still see this scribbly and all that good stuff, but it was definitely not done that hastily. Okay, now this is what I call the complete first statement. So I have the canvas covered. You got a good idea of what's going on. Now what I want to do is make it start to have some form. So in blending all this, some of the good stuff is gone. So what I usually do on the second, this has got some form, but it needs more. So in blending, some of the good stuff went away. So I'm going to take some white and cad yellow deep and add a little warmth back in there. Now that didn't really make a heck of a difference at all. So I'm going to grab some more white. Oops. See, and you can just use a paper towel, and especially when it's dry like this. Toilet paper. Just go right over the top. And I'm also going to take some of that violet. Rather than just taking the green and making a darker version of the green, I want some of the reds and violets to be the dark area of this. So I'm going to grab a little bit of alizarin. Ew, too much. What's too much dioxazine purple? I want a little. I like alizarin. It's. We got to talk about alizarin. Alizarin is one of the pigments that's not very light fast. It's got a light fast rating of 3. So I'm really trying to go off alizarin because basically what that means is that over time your painting will darken. But it's such a wonderful color when it comes out, and it has great glazing properties, and it's very hard. I have not found a good substitute yet, but I'm working with another artist friend to find a good substitute for alizarin. I tried using another color, I went through withdrawal, and I'm back on it.
How do they come up with those names like a lizard?
You know, I have no idea how they came up with the original titles. Some of it, like Lappy, actually comes from the stone. And, you know, so some of the Indian yellow used to be made, the pure Indian yellow used to be made from actual urine. But now they don't do that, they synthesize it now. So I know how some of but there's a wonderful book on, oh, I got to think of that guy's name. I'll have to get back to you on that, maybe for the next show, that actually talks about the pigments and their origins and each name. But I don't know in particular how alizarin started. So I put that on really loosely, and now I'm going to kind of take a lot of it off, just as much as I want. I'm just going to leave what I want. Now I think that the red over the green, because it's a complement, is a lot more interesting than just putting a darker version of green. Okay, let's see, we need to add, let's reinstate some of the darks that I lost when I was doing all this. And so let's see, we've got this, that's going on there. I'm not going to draw a little straight, you know, I'm tempted to draw a straight little circle here because that's what's happening. But it's more interesting to break up that line, so I'm doing that. On this side, there's some things going on. So I'm breaking this up here, there. Okay, that's enough of that kind of thing. Let me add just some more. You know what I think I'm going to do is there's this wonderful, we talked about Indian yellow, and it's just this wonderful warm color to glaze over the top. I didn't have it out on my palette. I use it more in final stages than I do in the beginning mixes. But it's,
Is that because it's transparent?
It is, yes, it's exactly why I wait till the end, because it's transparent. I can use it for glazing, and I hardly have to use any medium at all. I just put it through. Look how it's a very wonderful bright color, and I'm just going to put it over the whole side of this. So you're not losing what you already have down here. It's just enhancing it and making it richer. You can still see the strokes, you can still see the color that's under there. That'll make this side really pop. This side was kind of boring. I'm even going over the green, because that just really helps the green. It's like, ooh, yeah, we're happy, we like you. Now the trouble is, you know, I do a little bit and then I do too much, and when you stop, I don't know. I haven't learned that one yet.
So the canvas has to be totally dry before you do that? Or?
Yes, when you're glazing, which is what I'm doing now, it has to be totally dry. Otherwise, you're picking up the layer that you've painted previously, and you're making a mess.
How long does it take to have it totally dry?
Well, you know, what I just painted today on that first statement, I used a lot of medium, which acts like a dryer. So I could paint over that in 2 days, a couple days, because I'm not using a lot of paint. You'll see this is very thin, very watered down. The way most people paint, you'd have to wait a lot longer than that. But I like to work in layers. Okay. I'm going to throw some over here, throw some over there. I keep looking back here because I'm looking in a mirror that was here to see, you know, what my progress is. Okay, so this gives you a good idea of the second statement and what you would do to get to that place. Now, I'm going to go ahead and show you the final painting that I did. And as we talked about before, it is quite a bit warmer. It's actually like the background that I have here. This one is just glowing. And really, what I did to take it from that step to this step is I continued to do a series of glazes until I was satisfied that this was dark enough and this was light enough. And I wanted, there are some concerns that I had. I had to decide what, obviously in a single subject thing, even when you have one thing, and this is a portrait style thing of a pepper, you still have to have a center of interest. And so I fought back and forth. The way the light was hitting it right up here would have been nice, but that's not a good place to put a center of interest in the painting. So even though it was brighter and lighter, I toned that down considerably because that's not an appropriate place for the center of interest. What happens if it is your center of interest, the viewer goes off the painting, they don't come back, and you're dead. So here I decided that this area instead would be the center of interest, and I moved it over there. So that's how I ended up finishing the painting. So it really took about 2 more sessions of glazing to get it to that point. Wonderful. Now it's time for my favorite part of the show. What was I thinking? And what I'm going to do is show you a painting that I really struggled with, and we'll talk about whether I could fix it or not. This is a painting of Chuck. It was a portrait of our dog who was 15 years old. And he always had, it's funny because my friend Janet always says you become enamored of a painting so you don't always see some of the flaws. But when I took it to career day at the school, when I was talking to children about becoming an artist, they pointed out so many flaws. It was really, really good. They talked about, well, why does he only have one ear? Well, he didn't. One ear was down and one ear was up, but they didn't understand that. And I thought, okay, well, that's good. If I'm not communicating to them, then I'm not communicating to anybody. And so they, then I just kind of stuck it in the closet, didn't think about it. And when I started the show, I decided, okay, my dog passed after 15 years, and he was my buddy, and I just couldn't get rid of the painting. And I thought, well, maybe I can use it on my segment to fix it. So what's wrong with this painting? The composition is bad. He needs to be a little more centered, and so that's the first thing. The green chair that he's sitting on does not make sense. Nobody but me knew that it was a green chair he was sitting on, so nobody cared. That didn't work. And the background just really didn't do anything for his face. It makes himself pop, his whole body, but it really doesn't focus on his face. So it's not horrible, but it was getting close to the John Smith trash collection. It was getting there. So this is what I did to fix it. He's a lot better now. I painted the whole background black. And what that did was, you'd think white against black, you would be able to really make the face pop. But, when he was against a black background, that really made his whole muzzle and his whole self just really jump out of the painting. So that really helped the composition. No, I didn't move his whole body over, so it still looks a little awkward with the one ear thing. However, it is not as offensive because of the black background. So this is one where I felt like I could save it, still use it, and enjoy the painting and enjoy the memory of my dog. And it didn't end up in the trash collection. But this was definitely one of the ones that I would save. What was I thinking when I was painting it? I don't know. I wasn't thinking about composition. I wasn't thinking about a lot of things. All I was thinking about was here was a cool picture of my dog and I wanted to do it. Now this was many years ago. I do put, some of the lessons that I've learned from this is that I do put a lot more thought into everything before the pre-production stage of doing a painting. How is it going to sit on the canvas? What is it going to look like? All these things are thought of before I start painting, before I start drawing. And I can spend hours deciding on that before I ever hit the canvas. When I do that, my canvas and my whole painting session is a lot smoother. And so hopefully, eventually, I will run out of these puppies and we won't have this part of the show anymore. But no, I'll probably always have one or two that, as long as I've been painting, there's always one or two that just didn't work. And I prefer to pick on my own stuff and show you why it didn't work as opposed to other people's stuff because critiquing paintings is so subjective. So that's basically what happened with Chuck. And so he's happy now. Okay, I'm going to switch back to the second statement of my painting and work on it a little more for the rest of the show and see where we can go with this. Thank you.
When you do your glazes, do you have to wait for each glaze to dry, or can you glaze on top of another glaze when it's
I do
wet?
I do both. I wait for some of them. I wait for them to dry, and in other cases, like what I could do with this one right now, since I can add some of the white that I lost when I put the yellow back on, so I can add some of these, except that my brush is dirty. See, and I'm tempted to just, I get tempted to go in there and just put more paint on it. Maybe that'll fix it. But no, wiping the brush really helps get a cleaner stroke. So in this case, I can, I'm not glazing. So in answering your question, in this case, I'm not glazing over it, but I can continue to paint. And down here, since I did glaze over this, yes, a case of where, let me grab one of those violet kind of brushes. This was a mid value. I could probably get away with glazing over glazing down here. Let's see, where was the dark? The dark was right up here. And I know that looks a little, it's muddy, it's ugly. Ow. You know what? Okay, the reason that happened was there was white in my brush. White and glazing are not compatible. If you're glazing, by definition of glazing, you don't use white. So I'm going to use a paper towel, and because there was a lot of medium on there, I can basically erase it. Cool as that. And so now we have a dirty brown spot. I'm running out of big fat brushes. And I brought a lot too. Okay, so I'm not going back in that pile because it was not nice to me. And I'm going to go up here to the straight dioxazine purple and see what I can do about making this a little darker. That was like not enough paint on the brush. Okay, that's very purple, but basically what I can do is take some medium and move it around. This is dark here, this is dark here. And I can also grab some more of my glazing color and mix on the canvas. That was dark. See, I'm not asking myself whether it was warm or cool because the whole thing was very, very warm. So I already know that, and now I'm just picking to see where the darks are and put them back in. I like this contrast too. The other painting was very warm and glowing, but this one has a nice different feel to it with the red and the purple. So any object that you love to paint, you can give any object soul. If you love to paint something, it just comes through when you're painting it. And the only bad paintings I've done are ones that I did, and I really didn't feel like doing them. So as far as giving your wall some soul, get those brushes, get the paints out, give it a shot, and you know, if you don't like it, you throw it out, and you'd be. But start with, you know, the other thing is, even if you're just starting, use good materials because you never know when you're going to make a masterpiece, and it would be just a shame if you had painted this wonderful thing on a bad canvas. So, so go ahead, give it a shot, give your wall some soul. We're going to be glazing.
Thank you.